Welcome back for the afternoon. Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So picking up from where we left off, I'm actually going to continue with the motion that I had made previous to our break, and that is to draft a bill prohibiting or creating some sort of guidelines for the libraries to prohibit the access of obscene materials to those under the age of 18 on the website.
And the second was by Representative Lane. That's still good. Discussion on that. Representative Shustak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more a question than it is a comment, or I'm still deciding how I want to vote on this. The information we were provided before the break was about an app called Libby, which I'm not sure what the connection is between libraries and Libby. There's some connection with library cards, and I don't know how that works, but the app is not anything we have any control over. It's not a Wyoming thing. It's not anything that we can prohibit. So I'm just kind of want some clarification as to how this bill draft would deal with a publicly available national app from a private company that we have no control over.
So being a good lawyer, you have the answer to the question that you just asked, I'm sure. Representative Brady.
Thank you, Chairman. To address that question, I'm not sure I have the right answer, but I just had a thought. Is that we passed a bill about internet protection for children. We didn't say we can't control the internet, but we passed a bill, and whoever's on the other end better know about our Wyoming laws. So I think it can be done.
Representative Craigle. Senator Craigle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a quick question, and this might be a question for Mr. Fuller. I'm assuming based on the fact that we're moving forward with the motion that we're under the assumption that House Bill 43 doesn't explicitly apply here. So that was the question I had for Mr. Fuller, and then I have follow-up to that.
Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Craigo, the way I read House Bill 43, first off, the definitions define terms that then are used in other definitions. The way I read it, though, bottom line, the definition of covered platform, which is what the bill applies to. The bill said, House Bill 43 says a covered platform must basically perform reasonable age verification methods to ensure, the age of the person using the covered platform. The definition of covered platform makes clear that it is generally, bottom line, it is an entity that is providing the harmful material to minors for profit. Mr. Chairman, I don't know enough about Libby to know whether that is a for-profit thing. Certainly the libraries are not for-profit, which would lead me to think that they would not necessarily be covered under that age verification draft.
Senator Craigle.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that. That's helpful. My thought is this becomes sort of a legal question at some point, because we don't want two laws that may vaguely affect the same action, because that's where we run into constitutional problems. And so rather than have a bill draft on that in particular, what I would like to know is, and maybe we could work on this for the next meeting, is let's dig a little bit deeper on that, find out if this would apply to Libby, if it's a nonprofit or for-profit, if it's an actual company for profit. And if not, it might be easier to actually amend the law we already passed to include libraries in that than to create a whole new law just for Libby, right? Let's maybe amend that a little bit different so that it requires age verification, but do it through the law we already passed. That's just the thought, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that our public libraries do offer what's called Wildcat app, and that's where you can download items onto your phone. Additionally, there are other apps besides Libby, and those are Hoopla, Kanopi, magazines, Tumble Books, and Libby. And so those are all tied to our public library system. And so it would be, could we amend the motion, if this is friendly, to include all digital formats of library to be age verification restriction?
The bringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we could, that would be a friendly amendment. I'm wondering if I should just withdraw this, if we could direct LSO to find out some more information, see how these different bills interact with each other, and then come up with some, a next course of action in the next meeting.
Is that your request?
Yes, and I'll withdraw my motion.
All
at
right,
this time.
motion's been withdrawn and a request made to LSO to
The second has to approve that withdrawal.
second,
So
agree
moved.
to the withdrawal. Thank you for the clarification there. And then we have a request of LSO to research these digital resources that affect the Wyoming libraries. And to whatever further extent, look at House Bill 43 and the applicability or potential applicability. All right, so that concludes our discussion from this morning on obscenity and stalking laws. Thank you, committee, for some great work there. A lot of important stuff. And that brings us to the Wyoming probate code, which has kept me up at night waiting for this opportunity.
You have Mr. Harmon. and
Mr. Harmon, Mr. Meyer. No offense, but I did not get any email about the probate code.
Now it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Lance Harmon. I'm an attorney in Cheyenne, Wyoming, practicing primarily in probate and estate administration. I also serve on the board for the estate planning, elder law, and probate planning section for the Wyoming State Bar. And I'm here in that capacity today. With respect to the probate code, I believe there were some other individuals who submitted proposals. When we received the request from the LSO about the potential of modifying our probate code, we sent an email out to our listserv. There are currently, I think, about 199 attorneys that participate in our listserv for this planning section of the Wyoming State Bar. And we received quite a bit of feedback from those attorneys. A number of them were advocating for the adoption of the Uniform Probate Code, which has been adopted in some surrounding jurisdictions. Others took more of a wait and see approach, primarily advocating that we identify real issues that might exist with our existing code and then specifically craft a solution to those issues. At this time, I think our code works quite well. Each probate's a little bit different, and they raise different facts and circumstances. Could our probate code be improved? Absolutely. There's always room for that. To do so, I think it would take more of a measured approach to perhaps appoint a committee to go through our probate code section by section, identify existing issues and potential resolutions to address those issues, and then be able to present that, similar to what was done when we updated the LLC statutes and when we updated the Uniform Trust Code.
So at this point, do you have any recommendations for improvements that you'd like to see us consider during this interim?
I don't know that we would have any for this interim. I think, one of the primary concerns that we've heard expressed is the ancillary probate provisions for those probates that are actually occurring in another jurisdiction, but have property located in Wyoming. There are a few provisions in our code that address that, and I think they can be worked around. But I would propose, or I guess we would propose as a group right now, that we take a more measured approach to say, let's do this more of a holistic approach rather than identifying specific sections that need to be addressed and have a patchwork that maybe doesn't meet our overall objectives and goals.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Herman. So on that ancillary, I think one of the issues is that you can't have a summary. There's not a process for a summary probate with an ancillary inside of an ancillary administration, or is there? Or do you have to, or do you have to go through it? If you, let's just say the scenario where you have real estate and that's all you have, and you're dealing with a probate from out of state, can you go through a summary distribution process?
Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. Yeah. With respect to that, I believe that you can, Senator Olson. There's a provision, if you read through the statute, there's a provision that one of the representations that need to be made in a small estate or summary distribution proceeding is that the matter is not being probated in another jurisdiction. If it is, you need to disclose where that's being probated. And what we typically do is we attach certified copies of some of those pleadings where the personal representative has been appointed and any action that's been taken by that court.
Fair enough.
Follow up.
No, fair.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Scott Meyer on behalf of Scott Meyer. No bankers this time. I think that Mr. Harmon summarized this pretty well. You know, a lot of this came up last year when we started talking about some of the bills to change what is required for a probate, the limiting factor, then also the transfer on death automobiles. Some of the bills that Senator Olson and Senator Craigo had brought. The question just came up, do we need to start looking at some of the rest of the probate code? And I'm reminded of a comment that former Speaker Kermit Brown said, be careful what you ask for. Because this is kind of an unwieldy statute in the fact that it's not uniform. But I think Mr. Harmon's right. I think it works really well. There are some things that need to be probably done, but I do encourage the idea of having a working group, much like we did with the LLC laws, the corporate laws, the registered agent laws, the trust code. And understand that those things took, I want to say specifically the LLC stuff, but that took 2 years. And so I think this is a thing where if we get some people together that have vested interests on making sure that it's right, whether it's practitioners, whether it's trust officers, whether it's judiciary, somebody, but just have a group of folks in there that were willing to do this and go through it but line by line. And then as you get through some of this stuff and section by section, and then report to the committee, here's what we're looking at, here's what we're thinking, and so that the committee understands what's happening instead of trying to do it all at once. I just think that'd be unwieldy. I think it'd be difficult for anybody to follow. And I really want to make sure that the committee has that. The other thing I'd point out, Mr. Chairman, is that as one of Wyoming's commissioners on the Uniform Laws Commission, this is a uniform probate code that's out there. If we wanted to have any information from that, we certainly have the resources of the Uniform Laws Commission to tap into if we needed to look at that. But I suspect, unlike the UCC, a lot of these that we do a lot of Wyoming, what we call home cooking. And so they're not always the same in every other state. We have different limits, different requirements, different thresholds that they have to meet on all sorts of statutes, whether it's LLCs or corporations or anything else. So my guess is we'll probably see a lot of that in this as well, because people are still used to the Wyoming's probate code. This is how we've done it. That doesn't mean it has to always be done that way, but that's just how people, I think, are familiar with it. So that would be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that that a committee get formed, at least a working group of some sort that says this is where we'll go through section by section. with stakeholders and try to figure out what is available to change, what should be changed. Maybe nothing gets changed in that particular section, and then report back to this committee.
So, Mr. Meyer, I'm unfamiliar with those prior efforts in other areas of the law. Were those ad hoc working groups formed by a committee, or were they formally made by management council? Do you have any recollection of what the structure was of those working groups?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, those were ad hoc put together. They weren't informed by management council. It was just, here's a list of people that were interested in that particular law. Mostly, as I was on that committee too, that Mr. Harmon spoke of with the elder law and estate planning group. That'll be probably the primary way of getting things out, but there's also, like I said, the Wyoming Trust Association. There's other people out there that may have some interest in this. Reach out to them. What I've seen in the past is that what we generally get is we may get 25 or 30 people that are interested in saying this is why this is good or not. After about the second or third meeting, that drops off. And by the time you get through 1 year of this stuff, you probably have a half a dozen people that are really working their way through this to make sure that we have a good law.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Mr. Meyer, I think that's a really good idea on a way to approach this. What brought this topic, or the reason why I pushed this topic on the agenda, is because each year it seems like we keep coming back with some small, there's fixes this year, there's fixes next year. Some of it's trust specific, but some of it is probate specific as well. And just thought, if we're going to come back every year with something, why not? I think the holistic approach that Mr. Harmon's talking about is a good idea, to sit down and really go through the code and figure out, an overhaul, if that's really what we want, rather than piecemealing it every session. I think that's a really good approach. And you could do that with, I think your practice group is a great place to include. I think the Trust Association would have to be involved. And then I think obviously you get some senators and some representatives involved if you can. Mr. Chairman, I don't think that has to be anything. We can informally create that group, knowing that we're creating it, and you're still going to be here as chairman 2 years from now, hopefully. And you can remember that we have this group out there doing work, and put it back on the interim schedule.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, and Co-Chairman Olson, I think this does work. I don't want to give you any false sense, though, that we do this once, they won't be coming back, because we've done that with the LLC statutes and the registered agents. We come back because there are little things that just need to be tweaked or they don't work. But I do think that this is the approach to get this to the point where, at least under Wyoming law, the Wyoming practitioners understand what they're trying to do, and it's not just a hodgepodge of different ideas that just don't seem to work.
Yeah, and Mr. Co-Chairman, so like one example is last year, Senator Crago had a bill to change the probate threshold to $400,000. Well, that didn't adjust the ancillary thresholds. So the question is, why are those ancillary thresholds set the way they're set versus the in-state threshold? And should we have looked at all of those together? That's just an example in my mind of how we could really go through and make sure everything's aligned and we're addressing it all at once. But yes, you wouldn't preclude something from coming in future years, but try to keep things as uniform as we can.
I would agree.
So besides Senator Hicks, who else would like to serve on this work? Senator Crago, anyone else be interested? Senator? We need at least one.
Only
House
one more
seat.
lawyer.
Senator, or Representative Chestek.
Every single lawyer on the outside.
So what I would like it would be if at the next meeting, if we could have before that time reached out to the Trust Association, any other groups that you might recommend that we might reach out to, and just briefly bring representatives of those groups to the meeting in Casper, so they can all meet each other and maybe carve out a plan. My worry is that working groups are often uncompensated service among the legislators. And if this turns into.
Wait,
a-
we get compensated as legislators?
Not like you do as an attorney, but the working groups tend not to get per diem and travel and all those sorts of things. So I worry a little bit about this approach in that it could become quite time consuming for the legislators and so
Zoom.
Zoom works. All right. So
Mr. Chairman, I will point out, I think that as Mr. Harmon had mentioned, that there's enough people that have responded to the listserv from the Wyoming State Bar. I think, like I said, I think you'll get a bunch of people that are interested to start with. It'll be trying to make sure that we keep those people interested through the whole process. But I think it's a worthwhile endeavor for the legislature as well as for the attorneys that are deal with this, all the other stakeholders to know that we have something up to date, like the ancillary probate issues or anything else that comes up, that we've at least gone through and made sure that we have references. And then once we put something together like that with LSO looking over our shoulder saying, this doesn't work because you reference to a section that doesn't exist or what have you, I think that'll work really well.
yeah, I would just hope that maybe the group could move, get some preliminary work done without necessarily involving the legislators and bring them in when appropriate, but without tying up too much time commitment from the legislative group unnecessarily. Does that make sense?
And I would agree.
Okay.
Also, one last thing, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Co-Chairman.
At least one last thing from me. I think it would be important, since you guys appear to be at the helm of this, you're the self-appointed chairman of this process now. Being voluntold, but I think, I don't know what the spread looks like in your practice group, for example, when it comes to the UPC, but at least from my perspective in the legislature, our recommendation would be to use this committee to look at the Wyoming code and make changes to the Wyoming code, not to come back with, well, we think we should just adopt the UPC and I think that will narrow your group of involvement pretty significantly, because those that are interested in the UPC, that's not what we're trying to do here, at least from my perspective.
And I would echo that. I think home cooking makes sense.
Yeah.
Any questions from the three designees? Anything further from either of you?
No, Mr.
No, Mr.
Chairman.
All right. Well, look forward to seeing you in Casper in August, right?
I'm retiring in July.
Thank you very much. Ms. Butler? Do you sense that there'd be any interest in the judicial branch participating at all? I would think not, but.
Mr. Chairman, I would sense no, but I can definitely round the bases and ask the question and then get back with the new appointed chairs of that task force.
Yeah.
Or what, I don't know is it a task force?
Working group.
Working group, my apologies.
Task forces have to get paid.
That's,
Yeah, so we work on the cheap around here.
but I can definitely ask.
Thank you.
Be happy to.
And I was just kidding about Senator Hicks. We don't need to add him to the list. All right. Mr. Fuller, are you clear on what the plan is for probate?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I am. I don't know if there'd be anyone for public comment. Just
Anyone
wanted to
in
know
the
that.
room on public comment? Oh, thank you for
She's trust association.
the other member of the new working group.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Kristen Lee and I represent the Wyoming Trust Association. So I'm just going to sit here right now and introduce myself, and then I'll get with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Harmon. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your efforts. Anyone else in the room on probate? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, with that, we'll close the robust discussion on probate and move on to retail theft. Retail theft.
You're an hour ahead of schedule.
And Mr. Chairman, just a note about this topic, 13-01, I did include the theft statute for the committee, just as a reference.
Thank you. Did we have anybody pre-register for Zoom comment on this topic?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a gal from Walmart who signed up to testify. I don't see her online at the moment, but I just sent her an email to let her know that you're ahead of schedule.
All right, so Mr. Steenbergen. Welcome to Joint Judiciary. This is an important topic, and the more I learn about it, the more it bothers me and worries me. Yeah.
Good afternoon, committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about this issue today. So my name is Dale Steenbergen. I am the president, CEO of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce. I am CEO of the Wyoming Chamber of Commerce, and my office runs the Wyoming Retail Association. So the Retail Association has retail members from all over the state. The Wyoming Chamber of Commerce, we are made up of economic development and chambers of commerce across Wyoming. We have about 7,000 businesses that participate in our coalition at this time. So the first time somebody mentioned organized retail crime to me, I expected Tony Soprano to come screaming around the corner in his black Cadillac and somebody to let him out. And then the next experience I had was sitting in this committee a couple of years ago when we heard from a private retailer, one woman shop as it was, who owned a meat market. I don't remember the town it was from, but it broke my heart when I heard her testimony, because they were going into her store. One guy was grabbing the meat. The other guy was grabbing the fire escape door. She was running to check the fire escape door, and they were cleaning her out. And they were smart, right? They were cleaning her out for like $900 a pop, right? So I think the first thing I'd like to tell you is I'd like to reset your mind about what we think about organized retail crime. And to think about organized retail crime is that when more than one person gets together to do this and go out and tax this, that's organized retail crime. When people are conspiring either inside a business and outside a business, or multiple folks from outside of a business working together to go and attack one of our retailers in the state of Wyoming, that is organized retail crime, right? And so it's becoming a problem. There's a few things we know. We know that the number of folks who do this, who repeat this crime again and again and again, are going up, not just in Wyoming, but across the nation. We know that the quantity of merchandise that they are stealing and they are organizing to steal is going up, because when you're organized and you're not stealing, it's not grandma grabbing a pint of vodka. It's, I'm going to steal for a purpose. And, a lot of these items end up being online for sale the next day. In our retail calls, probably a year ago back, but a lady from Gillette was talking about the fact that she lost these items and the next day she can go buy them back on the internet. So one of the interesting items they were stealing, there was some kind of face cream, and they were going to stores all over Wyoming and wiping it out, running back to Colorado and selling it online. Right. So we want to try to provide tools to protect our men and women that are trying to make a living in our state. The brazen behavior of the crime, right? I mean, when I was a kid, shoplifting was Terry stole a candy bar, and I'm telling on you, right? But kind of that brazen behavior, like the story about the lady in the meat market, where one guy's pushing the fire alarm and saying, "Oh my gosh, back here, what's going out the front door?" pretty brazen and brash. I think one of the most concerning things since the pandemic, and I don't have specific numbers for you in Wyoming, but we know some numbers nationwide, that as these crimes are increasing, the number of the violence that is with them is increasing too. And I think you will hear some testimony kind of about that, but these guys don't want to get caught, right? So they are lashing out. So what does that do? Well, that does to, if you are the store owner, right? Couple of things. You want to protect your employees, so you make sure they don't engage with these guys, right? You don't want the added liability, because I know there's a lot of attorneys here, but you know, when you get hurt, there tends to be lawsuits. And so we want to find some ways to deal with this in our state. And so we have a couple of ideas for you as we move forward. So one, I think, is just realizing that we need to treat it different if there's more than one person involved. But if Johnny steals $700 and Bobby steals $800 and Cindy steals $300 and they do that together, there needs to be some kind of an aggregation, or seeing that you did that as a group and this is a theft, which can change the punishment. I think the second thing is that I think we finally got it 3 years ago, that after five times, then you can finally be declared a felony. You know, I have a child and I think about raising her. It didn't take 5 times before I was looking at a little stricter punishment to get her to curtail that behavior. And so we'd really like to look at something like 3 times or something like that, to be able to say, hey, look, district attorney, not necessary because there's different circumstances, but district attorney, if you get caught doing this 3 times, we're going to give the DA a tool to give you a felony. And so we'd like for you to take a look at that. The third thing that we've learned working with our police department and talking to other police departments across the state is that Wyoming really has this weird thing about arrests, that unless I see it, I don't arrest. So what our retailers would say is, look, we saw the guy steal it. We've got him on video stealing it, but when the police arrive, they only can write a ticket. There's some exceptions to that, and you got a guy behind me that will talk about that in much more detail. But we would like to see a little bit of tweaking of that arrest requirement, so that we can start putting the heat on some of these guys. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you may want to listen to some of these other guys first that are a lot smarter than me, but I'd appreciate any help that you could give us.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Steenberger? I have one.
Okay.
A number of states have already passed retail theft, organized retail theft laws. Is there a particular state that you see as a potential model for this committee?
So we would certainly be happy to give that to you. I do not know of a state right off the top of my head that I think has done a super job with that. I know Deborah is online, or I think she will be. She might be able to give you an idea of that, where she works in more states. So not right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Is it all right if I bring Mr. Moyer up here with me, sir? It's a good cop, bad cop thing.
Wow.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. In interest of time, like Mr. Moser to join me, WASCOP's had conversations with people from the retail industry and representatives of theirs from the retail industry since this became an interim topic, and have been working to gather information on what trends those entities are facing from across the state. And as I reach out with the topics that we discussed over the last couple of days to our members across the state, the other 2 topics elicited a lot more conversation and a lot more impact on law enforcement. However, WASCOP is here, and our membership are here in Wyoming to do whatever we can to partner with the retail industry to ensure that we're properly investigating and prosecuting these crimes and especially the concept of the retail theft rings, where it's organized crime, committing these crimes across the state. And we tend to think mostly on like I-25 and I-90, I-80 corridors and big box stores and things like that. But I've had interesting conversations with some of our small town chiefs and sheriffs about the impact that we get in just the middle of Wyoming on 2-lane roads. And that impact is local to some extent, out of state, regional, national to some extent. So there's a little bit of impact across the board. And if you look at the reading material that was provided by the retail industry, you'll see a lot of data in there on out the front door shoplifting and the impact that has on the entities, which then drives prices up for everybody that shops in those communities, and then affects the owners of those businesses. So one of the conversations that we've had most recently was this concept that we just mentioned a few minutes ago of the laws of arrest in Wyoming. So existing laws of arrest for a misdemeanor, which most of these cases of shoplifting are under that $1,000 threshold and are done so intentionally. These perpetrators will go into a store and make sure that they're not exceeding $1,000 so that they keep it at the misdemeanor level, get out with that merchandise, try again later, try again right away, just keep doing individual ones until they have thousands and tens of thousands of dollars worth of stolen material, but not in one instance to keep away from that felony threshold. So that leaves us with the laws of arrest that currently state that in Wyoming, if a peace officer observes a misdemeanor occur in their presence, they may arrest. And if not, they just have probable cause to believe, which somebody else's testimony and even video proof is just probable cause of that. The only reason they could arrest for that is if the person will not be apprehended. So if they're a flight risk, if they may cause injury to themselves or others, or damage property. So if they're kind of out of control and thrashing about, there could be continued crime if we don't arrest them. And then they may destroy or conceal evidence of the commission of the misdemeanor. Now, I think it's an easy bridge to gap when somebody's not from the area, that they're a flight risk, but that in and of itself might not be enough to make that arrest. And if we look at other statutes in Wyoming, domestic violence, for example, DUIs, for example, we have instances for misdemeanor crimes where law enforcement can make an arrest without witnessing that crime happen, but upon probable cause, because it's in the interest of the community to do so. And I think this is one of those cases. And I'll also explain that a little bit further by saying that when you get into just a reported shoplifting of a person stealing $200 worth of whatever it may be from a store, an officer shows up and they think that it's a run-of-the-mill shoplifting, and this person has, pocketed these items and taken them out, and it can probably be effectively dealt with a citation. And then later on, you find out when you're watching the videotape and you see them come in the store, converse with other people, and now you've got a theft conspiracy and so forth. What that physical arrest does is it gives the officer time to investigate that crime fully while not running the risk of additional crime happening or the offender absconding. So there's a lot of tools that can be used with that physical arrest that help slow down that investigation and allow the officer to spend time on it and find out if we have a ring of people involved, conspiracy, whatever it may be. And then also maybe check into the background of the person and find out if there's, they're a theft for hire kind of person. They're filling orders, basically, kind of like you do online shopping. People will go in and shoplift requested items and sell them at a discounted price. So all of these things come into effect after that investigation's started, and all of that evidence can be hidden or diminished if not given the time to do that through custodial arrests. And I guess that's in general terms about all I have, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from Mr. Thompson? Representative Filer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thompson. I was going to ask, along those lines of what you were just saying, instead of it just being an actual, like, say, group of people, maybe it's somebody that is stealing, say amounts of like $200-300 at a time, but then, is there a way that maybe we can look at compounding those? Like, so once you hit to that dollar amount, it doesn't matter if it's one time, two times, whatever, instead of it being a third time or anything like that, we actually compound that to where, hey, now the equal value in the last two times that you have stole is now $1,000 and we can arrest on a felony or something like that. If that makes sense. I know, because if you get called to a theft, there should be a way of looking up that, oh yeah, they just got a misdemeanor charge. This is what they stole. That was the value. Now they stole again 3-4 weeks later. And now that value's over $1,000 and make an immediate arrest. I know this is probably something for the committee and I discussed, but what do you think of that?
Mr. Thompson, we do have some other crimes, right, where we aggregate total loss or total value. Trying to remember back.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't prepared for that question, but I'm looking up the theft statutes that were included in your packet. On the top of page 2 on the composite of theft statutes, you have the subsection H as in Henry. And that says the amount of property involved in violations of this section committed pursuant to a common scheme or the same transaction, whether the property is taken from the same person or different persons, may be aggregated in determining the value of the property. So it's my understanding that that does already exist in statute. But once again, if you're given that decision at the time and you know you have $200 in front of you, it takes time to determine that aggregate. And in fact, it can take a lot of time if you're going back days or even weeks on camera surveillance review and talking with other officers and finding out that we had, the same person at a different store a week ago. In my experience on the application side of it, a version of that statute has existed since I've been in law enforcement, and very seldom was it ever used because it's difficult to aggregate that.
Further question. So, Mr. Thompson, when we have a situation like this, what does it take for your officers to have probable cause to search the offender's vehicle? My thought is, if they've been hitting store after store along the interstate, their car might be full of a lot of stolen merchandise, but I'm not sure that if we catch them shoplifting in a store in Shoshone, that gives us probable cause instantly to get in their vehicle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple of different ways to establish that ability to search the vehicle. One would be if the person is in the vehicle when apprehended post shoplifting event. That tends to make it easier if an arrest is made out of that vehicle. Oftentimes there's a search of availability for that. But let's say the car's parked in the parking lot and we might not even know where it's at. We make the decision and we investigate and we can make the arrest and take the person to jail. Now we have time to search the parking lot, maybe even the video from the parking lot, determine the vehicle. Oftentimes we can look in a vehicle's window and see evidence of shoplifting, open blister packs, various items. So if you just see, a package of steaks on the floor, that's probably not enough to get probable cause to search that vehicle. But there's often, if they're involved in this retail theft work, there's more than likely going to be visible evidence that will allow us to apply for a search warrant, or at least seize the vehicle pursuant to the application of a search warrant. And then there's other procedural issues that might come into play. If that vehicle is left for a certain amount of time in a private parking lot, it might be subject to tow. So there's a lot of different ways that helps expand that investigation.
Further questions? All right, Mr. Moser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. Thanks for your time, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, for such a great outline of the law. I'm here from more of a business's perspective. We support this legislation, as the good chairman knows. I've been bugging about this concept for a couple of years, and it's just getting worse and worse. Why am I here? Well, if you and a gang of people are going to rip off a retail product that's easy to resell, I dare you to find a better one than alcohol and tobacco, which is primarily what we sell. Now, as a background, before I did this, I owned a liquor establishment for years in Cheyenne. And before that, I managed corporate retail. So I know retail theft pretty well. happily back then, and our friend from Walmart, they probably wouldn't approve of this procedure, but back then we'd chase them down the street a couple miles and body slam them if that's what it took to catch somebody. And this is, even though I'm originally from West Nebraska, this was in Denver, and the cops did arrest them and then cuff them and stuff them and send them off to jail. That is not how it works in Wyoming, for many of the reasons my good compatriot has outlined. Just want to put things in perspective, committee. Owning a small business, some of you do. This isn't theft from a business. This is theft from me. When I owned a liquor establishment, stealing from me was no different than breaking into my house, because that's directly from me. It's personal. It isn't just this abstract theft thing. And I thought the example that Mr. Steenbergen brought up was really good. Now, we have, committee, before passed specific laws addressing specific legislation. Having done this a time or two, one of the statutes you were looking at, we actually worked on, and that was gas theft, which seems kind of ridiculous now, but our bill sponsor, to show you how long ago that was, it was a freshman senator named Drew Perkins. But what was happening is that was back when, some of you may not remember this, when you used to pay cash for gas. Remember that? And we were the only state in the region that did that. Everybody else had prepay. And so we were getting cars from all over the region driving to Cheyenne just to fill up their big old vehicles and driving back down south. And so that was a major issue. And the only way we could think of to put some teeth in it was a revocation of a driver's license, because it was tied in with the idea of transportation. Another example, and this isn't in your packet, is from 63803, which was credit card skimming. When I was with the Lodging and Restaurant Association, we had waiters and waitresses and bartenders and hostesses that had little things on their waists. And so they'd take your credit card, they'd pass it by the little device, they'd give you your card back, and they'd have all your information. And so tailor fitting, like everything else in life, theft is evolving. And it's getting more complicated, it's getting more and more ornate, and organized retail crime is part of that. We actually have examples of members of ours, we have about 400 members, who have closed because of retail theft. It really is that bad. It's closing businesses. And so that's part of the reason these need addressed again. Now, organized retail crime, I think, is, if I can say this, low-hanging fruit, because it's such a vital issue. Now, the good chairman refers to it as organized retail theft, which I believe is what the FBI refers to it as. I like orc because I'm a Tolkien fan, and it sounds more evil that way. But the big thing is, with issues such as the credit card swiping fee and the fuel theft and ORC legislation, is deterrence. Because those people that do this are usually out of state, they're traveling down interstates, and they know what the laws are in specific states. And they know we're a weak link in that chain, especially belonging interstate. The key word in ORC is organized. We're talking about organized crime. If you Google it, you will find that many of those are run by Mexican cartels. They are not local operations. And what they'll do is they'll hit state by state, county by county, and move as fast as they can so law enforcement never catches up. Now, part of it that ties into that is violence. Remember me talking about chasing people a couple of miles? Well, now that would probably get me shot with the organized retail crime. Those people that are doing state to state have weapons, and the old Rambo sort of chasing people out in the parking lot and tackling them will probably end up in vast harm to yourself. These people are not nice people. They're not grandma stuffing a 200 ml of Fleischmann's vodka in their pocket. These people are career criminals that really know what they're doing and are willing to do anything to keep from getting caught. A buddy of mine owns a large liquor store in Memphis. And this was 6 or 7 years ago when we were talking about organized retail crime. And he showed me a video of, this is how this works in the extreme. It was a pickup right after hours, and it crashed through the main doors. And the 6 people that got out knew exactly what areas of the store they were hitting, because you go toward the high-end product, the stuff you can resell. They threw it all back in, they backed out, and they took off. Now, we don't have that in Wyoming yet, but we certainly have those groups hitting, especially along the main arterials. We haven't had any pickups crashing through the windows yet, but we will eventually. It's continuing to escalate. You asked about legislation. I've seen a number of types of legislation. Apologies to scripture, but basically whenever two or more you are gathered for that reason. Now, some people will tie in for resale, but it's pretty obvious if you got 4 people working together for theft, you're not doing it for personal use. The way it works a lot in our current communities is you'll have lookouts on each end of the aisle. They'll spec out the cameras. They've already cased the joint and they'll hit your high-end products and they're out within minutes. So it's a pretty, now this part, and I'll talk about a couple other things real quick, committee, and I won't belabor the point, but this is the one that really worries me because people can get hurt. These are not local shoplifters. These are violent people and bad things can happen. And we are blessed nothing has so far, but I think it's just a matter of time. We need that deterrent to keep them out of our state. Mr. Steenbergen mentioned the idea that it takes 5 misdemeanor shoplifting hits to upgrade to a felony. I think that's too many. Takes 4 DUIs to get a felony, if I'm right. I don't have that personally, mind you. But that being said, I think it should be 3 or 4. But since we did address that in law not too long ago, that's a priority for us. But the last one, and Mr. Thompson addressed this better than I can, is arrest versus citation. In talking to sheriffs and chiefs that I know, one sheriff in particular said, Mike, if you rip off a store for $500, I shouldn't write you a citation the same way as if I caught you going 40 miles in a 30-mile zone. It's a completely different crime, and being able to have that exception that Mr. Thompson mentioned, I think would help a lot because it's immediate consequences and the ability to investigate. So I thank the committee for their time. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Mr. Mosier? Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today. My question is about the partners, excuse me, the partners that have closed. Do you have an economic value impact that would be around the state for us?
Mr. Mosier.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lee, great question. Unfortunately, we don't do totals on retail amounts. And even with liquor sales, we only know what they buy wholesale. So we really don't have a way to calculate that. And I know of specific cases, but I would imagine there's a number we don't know about where theft was at least a major contributing factor. But like I said, I think it's going to get worse and worse as the penalties become more and more relevant. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Crum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would be, you talked about arrest versus citation. Is there a dollar amount you would arrest on, or is it from $1 you would arrest? Somebody stole your candy bar. Would you arrest that person, or does it need to reach a threshold? Would be my question.
Either one of you?
Mr. Chairman, I will defer to Mr. Thompson, but I think that's the exception would be at discretion. So I don't think you'd nail a 6-year-old for stealing a candy bar.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman, that's something that I hadn't considered, but I think the language of may arrest in there allows for that discretion. And I would argue there might be that time that candy bar arrest, as a street cop that there's something more going on. And you just need that time. Now, that same statute that I referenced earlier that allows for and limits custodial arrest also has a subsection in there that says the arresting officer can unarrest someone. So at the time the officer believes that a custodial arrest is appropriate and takes them to jail, at any point after that, prior to the court hearing, can determine that now those circumstances have changed and a citation will suffice, and then can release them from jail.
I'm reminded we had a terrible case in my community where teenagers were stalking a couple other teenagers inside the mall and went to a store and stole a knife and then used that knife to commit a murder right outside the mall. And so the violence and theft connection that you mentioned, is certainly, although I don't think there was any indication that was organized retail theft as we would normally think of it. The potential for violence associated with these retail crimes certainly there, and certainly something that we need to think about within the state. Let me run something by you. I mentioned this to a few different people, but it seems to me that a lot of crime in Wyoming moves across county lines. That offenders from one place go to another place, commit the crime and leave, whether they're delivering fentanyl like we talked about this morning, or they're committing burglaries. This frequently happens in my community, and then they leave and they take the stolen property with them and, you know, pawn it someplace else or sell it in a garage sale or, you know, otherwise fence the stolen property. Just run an idea by, what if we had a sentencing enhancement for any time someone crossed a county line in furtherance of a felony? So if you go from one community, you leave your community, go into another community across county lines and commit a crime and then flee back, that would be a sentencing enhancement perhaps. Because I think it makes the investigations potentially more challenging for law enforcement when the offender has fled the jurisdiction and is no longer there, taking the evidence of the crime perhaps with them. I also think there's a sense that we have a lot of relatively safe communities around our state, but bad people come across the line and do bad things in a relatively safe community and then disappear, and it shatters some of the sense of safety that people have in those communities. Do either of you have any thoughts about whether that sentencing enhancement for crossing a county line to commit a crime would be of value?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to refer to my age this time. When I started my career in law enforcement, some of the evidence that I found on interstate retail theft crime groups was an atlas. And for those that don't know, that's a book of maps that's now on your phone. So while it takes a search warrant to get into the phone and track down someone's location, that as part of a search of a vehicle, found highlighted routes through Wyoming and back to a starting location where it's easier to pawn items that are not stolen from the area. So I would argue that in addition to going or absconding to an area to not be detected, I would say that more often than not, people come to an area to commit a crime and then flee back to the safety of home. And that's what we see with organized theft rings coming into the state, and to some extent, local theft rings going to target-rich environments that might be across the county or might be across the county line. So I do think that a sentencing enhancement might be helpful in showing the seriousness and the planning and the conspiracy part of that crime, and help. I guess I don't know that it would necessarily deter it, because we would be capturing more often than not people from out of state or out of area. But having that sentencing enhancement would definitely be helpful.
Further questions? Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thompson, yesterday I talked about public access and the delay in public access that the state of Wyoming seems to have. Would public access help law enforcement to what's gone on in courts? Make it quicker for law enforcement officers to be able to say, okay, yep, Mr. Jones was involved in a crime in Teton County 3 months ago, and now he's in Carbon County doing something. Would that help you guys at all?
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to answer that question, all information sharing is good information, and more information sharing, especially for law enforcement, would be good. Generally speaking, in a case, well, a couple of things here. We have access to NCIC, which shows all arrests made, not necessarily convictions always, but it will show all custodial arrests made for that person. So that does give us an indication of history, their history with theft related, shoplifting related issues. Not making the custodial arrest, as happens with most misdemeanors, would not likely show up in any of those searches that an officer would have in the field. That would take further diving into whether we in law enforcement have access to Teton County's CAD system, or if we know that they live there, contacting them and further researching that. So all of those things can better be investigated when that person might be incarcerated and not out there hiding evidence. But yes, as far as sharing like that court related information that we talked about yesterday, and having law enforcement access to that would be very beneficial in this and other cases.
Thank you.
I believe I recall that some states, a conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor is a felony. Where in Wyoming, we grade the conspiracy based upon the most serious crime that flows from that conspiracy. So if the conspiracy is to shoplift $900 worth of material, it's, even though we have a conspiracy, it's a misdemeanor crime. Would it be advantageous, do you believe, to make a conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor a felony crime, at least in some circumstances?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. This has been something I've been personally pondering for the last couple of days. We haven't had much discussion amongst our membership on application of conspiracy to retail theft rings. However, my belief is that if we had a specific conspiracy to theft, it would be easier to prosecute and investigate those. We have an existing conspiracy statute in Wyoming and outside of drug investigations, and even to some extent in drug investigations, it's the more difficult avenue to pursue, more time consuming. And I don't believe, at least consistently across the state of Wyoming, are various counties using that as a mechanism. So if we had a roadmap for a conspiracy to commit theft, and as a policy decision by the legislature determine if misdemeanors equal misdemeanors or felonies or whatever, I would leave that to the committee. But I do think it's worth having the discussion on a specific theft conspiracy statute in Wyoming.
Further questions? Did we ever get our witness from Walmart online? I can't hear you. Yes. All right. I was hoping that she would get on before we concluded. Any final comments from either of you gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, just one more comment. We talked about the safety and security of personnel trying to apprehend shoplifters and how in this day and age, it's becoming more and more dangerous. I would submit to you that it's always been dangerous. And after 25 years in law enforcement and 9 years in the military, some of that overlapping, the most dangerous job in the world that I ever had was apprehending shoplifters. Received 2 stab wounds as a result.
Just thank you to the committee, because this is such an important issue for small businesses. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And bring in our witness from online.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, we have Deborah Heron online with Walmart.
Good afternoon. Can you
Good
hear me?
afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for taking the time to have a conversation about this really important issue.
Please introduce yourself and your affiliation and then tell us what you'd like us to hear.
Again, thank you, Chair Washut and the Joint Judiciary Committee. I'm Deborah Heron. I'm with Walmart and Sam's Club, and manage the state and local government affairs in Wyoming, as well as a couple of other states. And really the only testimony that I wanted to offer today is, again, to say thank you and appreciate the time of the committee and the legislature to consider policy as it relates to organized retail crime. This is something that we see happening across all of our stores in Wyoming. We are strong partners with our local law enforcement organizations, as well as with the Wyoming Retail Association, Wyoming Liquor Dealers, the Petroleum Association, and we would appreciate working together with you and being a partner to develop policy for the 2026 legislative session. I don't have much to add from a substantive standpoint from what you've already heard, but there are several ways to consider policy objectives that range from the criminal statute, as you've already talked about to some extent, to perhaps even a task force or ad hoc organized retail crime um, working group that brings together individuals from all of the different components along the stream, including prosecutors and DAs, law enforcement, obviously retail, both small and large, and every different type of retail. But it is certainly something that we have seen a preponderance of and would appreciate the opportunity to make things a little better in Wyoming. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Herron. Questions, Representative Lean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for joining us today. My question is, do you have any kind of economic numbers for us that tell us how big this problem is?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Chair Washit and was it Representative Lane?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I don't have specific numbers that I can share with you. I do know that in the retail report that I believe the Retail Association and Cheyenne Chamber submitted, there may be Wyoming specific numbers within that report. If not, I'm happy to take that as a question and see what we can develop for you. Obviously, we'd want that to be reflective of all retail, not just as a single retailer. But again, happy to come back to you with more if I can find the more specific Wyoming numbers for you.
Well,
Thank you. Would 2 weeks' time be enough time to find those numbers for Wyoming?
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much.
Senator Crum.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my question is, working with several states as Walmart does, have you seen a statute that somebody's has or a bill that somebody's ran that works effectively to combat this problem?
Ms. Herron?
Chairman, and I'm sorry, which senator asked the question?
Senator Crum.
Crum. Thank you, Senator Crum. Great question. Across a number of states, there are several policy ideas that have been effective. I'll mention a few of them here that are top of mind. One of the things that has been a good or has resulted in arrests and ability for local law enforcement to deploy blitzes where they can set up sting operations that address specifically the sophisticated organized groups that are using technology and other means of communication to execute their theft, if you will. We have worked in a couple of states to create a community grant program that is specific for local law enforcement to apply for funding that helps bring in additional resources or helps law enforcement work across jurisdictional or county lines to have a greater team. The other thing that has worked well in several states is creating a task force that is a part of the Department of Justice. That task force would have representatives from law enforcement, the district attorney's office, prosecutors, retail, what else has been included in the Department of Justice, and setting up in dedicated investigators. Many times organized retail crime can take a year or 2 years to build the case And so you need those dedicated professionals that can do data analysis as well as the investigative part of putting together the case before it can go to either prosecution or arrest. There have been, because every state's criminal statutes are slightly different, really that's a question for examination of Wyoming criminal statute, but there are several things in that area. I think I heard one mentioned with a prior testifier around threshold per person or per group. It is very common that an individual may perpetrate a theft up to a certain amount at each individual retailer, but that cumulative total is not recognized unless and may not contribute to the case unless there is statute that says that you can put all of that accumulation together. But a combination of all of those things I've just mentioned have resulted in several large busts. One of them in Oregon was up to $450,000 of Legos that were stolen from different properties all around the state, housed in a warehouse and were being shipped overseas. So those are the kinds of crimes and accumulation that really is part of an organized retail crime network or operation. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Further questions from Ms. Herron? Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Just could you give us some feeling of the amount of money we're talking about of theft or percentage of sales to theft, some way to quantify this so I can better understand just how much we're talking about. And I'm talking about Wyoming specific first, but then give us a comparison to other areas if you could. Thank you.
Ms. Herron, if you know.
Chair Washington Committee, I think that relates to Representative Lane's question about economic impact. And so I'm just going to put a pin in that note and see if we can round up some more Wyoming specific information for you.
Mr. Steenberger?
Yeah, so we looked it up from the national retailers off the U.S. Chamber website for Wyoming. Total impact, $220,807,900. Total value of the goods actually stolen. So a cost value, $9,769,336.
Is
And
that
so-
for 1 year or?
Yes. So we can forward that. I'm happy to, we forwarded it to you already while we were sitting there, but we can certainly forward it to the whole committee if you'd like.
Thank you, very helpful. Any further questions for Ms. Herron? Representative Brady?
Thank you, Chairman. This is just a comment for our speaker here. And I ran out of town and forgot some stuff, so I had to run, into one of your stores. But anyway, an area you have set aside, you have to pay right there. Anyway, it was hard to get it. I'm talking about the shopping experience. It was because, and rightly so, it seems like people have to be on guard for, watching what's going on, but trying to get an attention to one of the clerks. And I had to reassure her that I wasn't trying to distract her, but so it affects the shopping experience too, because they always have to be watching out, which is sad. Does that make sense?
Ms. Herron?
Chair Washit, Representative Brady, yes, it does, and I appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. And I hope that we had what you were looking for, but I do appreciate that you've recognized that there's a dynamic in store that takes place too, and the shopping experience can sometimes be affected in that way as well.
Ms. Herron, do these organized retail crime networks also include employee theft as well as customers?
Chair Washit, that's a great question. Organized retail crime tends to be sophisticated groups of individuals that are external to the retail location. They tend, from what I understand from law enforcement as well as our asset protection teams, they are individuals that are connected and using pretty sophisticated technology to make targets of certain items that are then intended for resale.
Very good. Thank you so much. I don't see any further questions for you. We do appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room wishing to testify on this topic? Mr. Carenti, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joey Carenti, Rural Wyoming Matters. Almost made it a full committee meeting without testifying. I'm going to talk on the other side, little box stores, rural Wyoming. We suffer the same thing. These groups come through, and even if it's not organized, retail theft is a big issue, and it does have to do with the language of the statute we're talking about. I do have a background in retail loss prevention going way back to the days when Mr. Thompson was finding atlases in people's cars. So little bit of understanding on this, and anything I may get wrong, you can look over my shoulder and see which way he's nodding his head. The Title 63402 A Romanet 2, talking about what theft is, there's a word in there, knowingly uses, receives, or conceals. That used to be a standard when I was doing retail loss prevention. You had to see somebody conceal an item. We also had a secondary standard after you saw them steal it or conceal it, that they would have to knowingly attempt to leave without making payment. That normally meant going by all the cash registers. They didn't have to be out the door yet. And the reason why I think contemplating adding the shows intent to remove property without paying is important, because it leads into the merchant or the merchant's employee's ability to detain. And in rural Wyoming, I'm telling you, we don't have the ability to hire full-time security staff, loss prevention, breakage, and inventory management specialists. And they need to know that the law says, hey, you can at least attempt to stop somebody and say, wait a minute, I saw you put this in your jacket. You have now left past all the payment options. And yeah, if they're going to run, fine. I wouldn't recommend chasing them down the street either. But we cannot have that hesitation, because that initial contact is when you know, hey, either I'm going to get this guy back in the office, and then I'm going to go beyond readily apparent probable cause, I saw you do it, to actual evidence. Now we've taken it out of your jacket. I can call the police. I think that's important because everybody's been asking about numbers and the impact to the businesses in Wyoming, and we're looking for this big thing to justify clarifying or expanding this language. Over a year period, 3 thefts of under $500 to shut down a rural business. And we're a trusting group. We leave pallets of stuff out in our parking lot unattended overnight. This is killing rural Wyoming business. And then, yeah, there's stuff that we probably need to do ourselves, but we also need to know that we can be involved in pursuing our own justice, or at least what the basic rules for interaction with people we suspected have committed crimes that are depriving us of our own property as retailers. Under Section H, there's been a lot of talk about how to aggregate, especially when it's multiple crimes or multiple individuals. And if the committee might want to contemplate some language about aiding in the commission of the common scheme, then that might say, hey, you have 6 people, but altogether they stole $1,500. Each of them can be charged with a felony, something to that effect. I don't think that would be too much of a stretch from what we actually have now. And I believe there was a conversation earlier about fleeing across county lines, especially if this is a organized retail theft ring. But anytime you go to catching them is one thing. That's one thing we are good at in rural Wyoming. Once they leave your cities, they're coming through one of our spots and we know the car that doesn't belong and they're looking for them. So, hey, we got them. But as far as charging them with anything more than just, hey, it's shoplifting, no matter how far you went, I think that further contemplation in another bill about illegal commerce. I know we had a money laundering bill last year, but yeah, all these illegal activities, including the stuff we talked about this morning, the fentanyl, the drug dealing. I think a lot of this could come under illegal commerce operations and investigations. And just remember, whenever you hear little numbers that shut down rural Wyoming businesses or big numbers that Walmart will call in and be concerned about, every dollar of retail merchandise that is not paid for is 6 cents of taxes that we have to pay in lieu of that theft. So money is not going to the state as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions, Mr. Ferranti? Very good. Thanks for the rural perspective. Anyone else in the room wishing to testify on this topic? Mr. Mayor, welcome back there. Anyone else? Anybody left on Zoom? Okay, or closed public comment. Committee, what's your preference? Representative Webb.
Well, obviously something we need to look into. I don't know that we need bill drafts right now, but I think we need some information on how to proceed and helping us know how to proceed.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this last session, there was a bill that kind of addressed this issue. It wasn't introduced in time, but it was House Bill 187 from Representative Wasserberger. And it amended the penalties for theft. It reduced the threshold from $1,000 to $500 for both felonies and misdemeanors. And so perhaps we could start with the basis of that bill and, you know, whatever our plans are for the future of this concept, I think that would be a good place to start.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Lean. Resurrect House Bill 187. And if it's a friendly, perhaps we could also roll in there a reduction from 5 to 3 on the repeat offenses before it becomes a felony.
Mr. Chairman, that was part of that bill. So the two things that House Bill 187 did was, three things, excuse me. First, the 5 strikes and you're out becomes 3 strikes and you're out. Second, the threshold for misdemeanor versus felony theft was reduced from $1,000 to $500. And then third, the misdemeanor offense, the penalty was increased to 1 year instead of the 6 months.
Very good. And we have a second on that. Any further discussion on that? Committee, all in favor of that bill draft, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? I would move for a bill draft to address. I think we might be able to base it on roughly on the interstate flight to avoid prosecution federal statute, but to be for inter-county flight to avoid apprehension or prosecution, or in furtherance of a felony, be a new crime that would allow us to perhaps deal with a misdemeanor theft, who then flees one jurisdiction into another jurisdiction and give us perhaps a felony crime to and it could be a 5-year felony penalty clause on that. Is there a second? Second by Senator Kolb. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That one passes. Further motions on retail theft, retail crime. I think that will do us for today's discussion? Okay. Thank you all for participating in that organized retail crime discussion, and we'll see you perhaps in August in Casper for further discussion and tweaking and seeing where we go with that. With that, committee directives.
General public comment.
Any further public comment on any other topic? Anything, everything? Mr. Smith, how the Cowboys looking for this fall? Hey, right answer. Yeah, good. No further public comment? Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. Did we decide on the additional 2 days?
We did. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, we're going to run through the staff directives here in just a moment to see what all we have. And then what we, as chairman, do following a meeting is we have a meeting with staff to start to build the agendas for the subsequent meetings. So that'll give us the opportunity to look at exactly how much workload we have and decide whether we need an additional meeting. But I mean, the goal is to try to accomplish it in the meetings that we've been given. That we did pare down the agenda with that in mind. But if, depending on what our workload looks like now, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fuller, give us a roundup.
Yep. So Mr. Chairman, this is a list of the actions that the committee took at this meeting. First, the committee adopted adopted rules to apply to the joint committee. That was option 2 as amended. The committee requested a bill draft, Department of Family Services confidentiality amendments that would be based on 2025 House Bill 48 or Senate File 157. The committee requested a bill draft concerning the transfer of mineral interest ownership if not used based on North Dakota's law, with a memo that describes any challenges to that law and similar laws that have been enacted in other states. The committee requested a bill draft that would be a resolution to amend the Wyoming Constitution to provide for Senate confirmation of Supreme Court justices upon appointment. The committee requested more information on fentanyl, and that will include a spreadsheet of any specific penalties that apply to fentanyl for the 50 states, the laws for penalties for minors specifically concerning fentanyl, if there are any studies on the impact of enhanced penalties in this area, and then questions on analogs and how those are addressed. The committee requested a bill draft to amend the stalking statute to provide a felony offense if the victim is a minor and there is at least or greater than a 3-year age difference between the defendant and the victim. The committee requested a bill draft based on 2025 House Bill 82 in Montana concerning a grooming offense. The committee requested a bill draft for requiring sexually explicit materials in libraries to be moved out of any children's or youth sections of that library. The committee requested research on digital resources in libraries, as well as the applicability of House Bill 43 to those digital resources for libraries. The committee requested a bill draft based on 2025 House Bill 187, the amendments to theft that I just briefly discussed, and then a bill draft to create a new criminal offense based on, I'll just use a shorthand, inter-county fleeing. And then, Mr. Chairman, the next meeting is scheduled for August 12th in Casper.
So we have 9 bill drafts thus far.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I counted 8 and then 2 research matters.
Okay.
Close enough.
Was there 2 separate bill drafts, one on the sexually explicit material and another one on the adult digital On digital resources, was that a separate bill draft?
So, Mr. Chairman, my recollection was Representative Singh had withdrew that motion
That's
for
right.
that bill draft in lieu of further research for consideration at the next meeting.
Then it is 8.
Good work, committee. Thanks you, all of you for being here. Shout out to the people here at Eastern Wyoming Community College who made us feel very comfortable and welcome here. And I think we got the sound delay system worked out today. Thank you to PBS for your assistance. And we'll see everybody in August in Casper.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Coach.
Just real quick, wanted to thank the committee. Judiciary, I've served on other committees, but I've served on Judiciary before. I'm glad that I'm back on it now. But one thing I enjoy the most about the committee is we take up the hard issues. So just want to thank the committee for working through some really hard issues over the last 2 days, and there's more to come. So we're just going to have to press forward and go through those issues, but this is the right committee to do it.
Very good.